Are we going?
Going.
Okay. Hey everybody, Sarah Nova again, and we have this week we have a special edition Triumph to talk about. We'll get to that in a second. 1977. If you know what it is, if you know Triumphs, you'll know what I mean by that. But what's going on in the shop this week? I want to get to this. This over here is a stack of Heidenau vintage racing tires, and if you've been following along with us, we are now the U.S. distributor for Heidenau vintage racing tires, a German rubber compound company. And we got our shipment in, and we have thrown them in the corner for now because we haven't even had time to build the racks for them yet. But we're shipping them out. If you're into vintage racing, hit us up. We have something for you. Other than that, we're cleaning up the front lobby a little bit. We're doing another one of our classes tomorrow. This one will be on engines. It's the fourth and last of our pre-planned ones. We'll do some smaller ones as the season gets going where people can bring their bikes in to us. But we have an assortment of engines here. The famous and infamous Yamaha TX750. Only one of these I've actually ever seen in the flesh, and I only have seen the motor. Trusty standby BSA, A65. And we have a Honda CM400, my first motorcycle engine here. And Yamaha of some sort. I don't even know what this is. So sometimes I let my parts guy drop some junk off with me because I want it for parts. Yeah, it's definitely Yamaha 5-valve, an 80s Yamaha 5-valve. I thought it was a Radian engine, but we actually looked up what a Radian looks like, and that is not the engine. So haven't run the VIN on it or number on it or anything like that. But we have a stack of bikes, a stack of motors that people are going to get into, and it'll be a good time. So this week we have perhaps one of the first special edition motorcycles. I know somebody out there will maybe correct me on that. So if you can, I would like you to, but you see the sticker here, 1977 Bonneville 750, Silver Jubilee, 1 of 1,000. This was made by Triumph in 77 to celebrate Queen Elizabeth, her 25th anniversary of being on the throne. And they made 1,000 for the American market and 1,000 for the English market. And they actually sold so well that they made another 400 to put them out there. This is an American market one. You can tell by the high bars. This is the American bar, and the smaller gas tank, which is sort of more of the cruiser style, more of the classic Triumph we're used to. By this time, the European spec and the English spec Triumphs were using a boxier tank, which I actually like the boxier one a little bit better, but to each their own. I tend to like the Euro styling better than the American styling on these things. Little recap of what was going on in 1977 for Triumph. They were struggling, as they always were, especially after, during the 70s. They were fully the Meriden, the worker-owned collective, the Meriden cooperative that owned Triumph at that point after fighting with Dennis Poor, wrestling the company away from him, and he also owned Norton. They were pumping out only the 750 twins at this point. So it's a T140, the evolution of the first Bonneville, 750cc, parallel twin, overhead valve. Not a lot of changes, although, it's the last version of the engine. Actually, it's not the last version of the engine. You still have the Mark I carburetors here, AML Mark I carburetors at this point. But you have the breather coming off the primary instead of the other old ways of timed valves of the earlier pre-70 motors. And you have the later valve covers, the displayed intake ports there. Just some there's detailed differences on the bikes over the years. But the point I'm getting to is that for 1977, this was woefully out of date technologically. If you watch our other videos, you saw the one we did about an 82 electric start a couple weeks ago. What was happening in this time period was much faster Japanese stuff. Overhead cams, double overhead cams, woohoo! Just bikes that were far more powerful, far more advanced. Didn't leak oil, had things like electric starts. This one still does not have an electric start. But that being said, this is a bike, even in 77, this was a bike for nostalgia. When the ad for this, I looked it up, the ad that ran for this in 1977, mind you, which is a year before I was born, sorry, the ad for this showed a guy who was retired and used to ride motorcycles but didn't anymore and had all his responsibilities. Saw an ad for this, dropped what he was doing, ran out, got on one, and rode away off into the distance, off to the sunset. So going after the middle-aged guy who wants to relive his youth has been a long part of his Triumph's history, selling nostalgia, and not unlike Harley Davidson. And not unlike Harley Davidson, the concept of a special edition gets certain people's minds. There really is nothing special about this other than the paint job, but that's enough. I mean, it is flashy, it is cool. These wheel rims painted in the centers. I mean, that takes time. The blue seat. I mean, that's different. It took a lot more. It took a lot more effort to make this bike, and for a small company like Triumph, it's not a small feat. I did a little bit of math. So I can only find sales numbers, figures for prices for the English version. But in 1977, this bike sold for about 150 pounds more than the standard Bonneville did. Converting that adjusting for inflation and converting that to dollars, it's about $1,500 in today's money. So it was quite a bit more expensive to buy this bike, and yet they sold out all the ones that they did. And from what I understand, it provided them a big sales boost, but not enough. The writing was on the wall at this point. They did last another 5 years until 1983, or 6 years. I mean, depending on when they went under in '83. But they didn't. They developed a couple more things, but they started to lay more people off after this. So this is a strange bike that sticks out in the time period of English motorcycle lore. But I kind of like it. I like the fact that they were a struggling small company and they still wanted to do something like honor the Queen. I guess we have it in the form of Harley Davidson with putting a few extra flags on certain models and stuff like that. But I find this one particularly interesting. Yeah.
What's it in for?
The bike is in here for just a basic service. Some fluids. The owner has put a aftermarket oil filter into it, which is great. And this is an oil and frame that's given the time period here. So the oil drains down here. There's a sump that comes out, and there's a oil filter that goes in there that is essentially what the BSA B25s are running at the end of their life. So English bikes did eventually catch up and put oil filters in themselves from the factory, but you can also do some aftermarket retrofits that are pretty simple and really do help with the longevity. This bike is almost bone stock. I see Hagen shocks on it. I haven't spent a lot of time on it. Kent is working on this one up and close, so I just sort of have looked it over and said, hey, that's pretty darn pretty. But it's definitely a real collector's piece, and just very interesting. So I can ramble on and on about the death of the British motorcycle industry. I named my dog Bertie after Bert Hopwood for a reason. He was a designer of English motorcycles. But yeah, I'm gonna leave it there. If you have experience with these, let me know. If you have ridden one of these, if you love the special editions, I think I'm gonna get my math wrong, but the modern Triumph put out a platinum edition towards the end of Queen Elizabeth's reign for one of the modern Bonnevilles. So it's a tradition that I don't know if this was the first royal bike made. Actually, if you're watching and you know which one, there was an earlier brand of one of the older English brands did it for a different regent. That would be very interesting to know. But yeah, otherwise, let me know what you think about Triumphs, and if you hate them and you figure this is just garbage because they couldn't keep up with Kawasaki's at this point. Always love to hear that opinion too. So thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't, and we'll see you next time.